All right, let's set the scene. It's 9 AD, and you're looking at the Roman Empire. This isn't just a country, it's the global superpower. Its legions are the most feared, most organized fighting force on the planet. Rome, for all intents and purposes, looks absolutely invincible. But way out in the dark, dense forests of Germania, that whole idea is about to be completely and utterly destroyed.
Just try to picture that for a second. It's a scene of total carnage, rain and blood turning the forest floor into a swamp. For 3 straight days, Roman soldiers were not just fought, they were hunted, they were trapped, and they were systematically taken apart by Germanic tribesmen. This was an ambush of incredible brutality. The most professional army in the world was simply butchered.
So that's the real question here, right? How in the world does this happen? And the answer, you'll see, is way more tangled than you'd think. It connects this absolute military disaster to the legacy of a legendary conqueror, and, you're not going to believe this, a law about what Roman citizens were allowed to do in their own bedrooms.
Let's just be crystal clear about the numbers here. We're talking about 20,000 men. That's 3 entire legions, the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th. Plus all their support troops, all their followers, just gone. Wiped off the map. Back in Rome, this wasn't just another loss. It was a deep national wound. They called it the Clades Variana, the Varian disaster. To really get how Rome ended up in this mess, we have to rewind the clock about 60 years. We have to talk about the man whose shadow looms over everything. The guy who basically invented the job of Roman emperor, Gaius Julius Caesar.
I mean, this guy's career was just a blur of action. First, he teams up with a couple of other powerful guys to run the government. Then, he spends 8 years conquering all of what we now call France. And when the politicians in Rome tell him to come home and give up his army, what does he do? He marches that army right on Rome, starts a civil war, wins it, and makes himself dictator, right before getting assassinated.
And here's the key takeaway from all that. Caesar proved that one man, with a loyal army, could take over the entire Roman state. His death didn't fix the Republic. It just created a huge power vacuum that only someone even more powerful, an emperor, could possibly fill. He set the template for absolute power.
But here's where it gets interesting. While Caesar was this huge public figure, his private life was classic old-school Roman aristocracy. Rumors of affairs were everywhere. That was the old way of doing things. But the new era he accidentally created would be led by a man who thought that to control an empire, you had to control every single part of it, right down to the most private moments of his citizens' lives.
So, after Caesar's death, there's another round of brutal civil wars, and the man left standing is his adopted son, a young guy named Octavian. He's the one who takes on the name Augustus and becomes the very first Roman emperor.
Now, Augustus wasn't just another general. He was a political genius. He knew that to stop the empire from just tearing itself apart again, he needed more than just armies. He believed he had to fix Roman society itself, to restore what he saw as its rotting moral core.
And this leads us to the most incredible part of his whole plan. Augustus came to believe that the strength of the empire literally depended on the moral strength of its families. And to get that strength back, he decided he was going to use the power of the state to legislate morality. He was going to police the bedrooms of Rome.
He did it with this law, the Lex Julia de Adulterius Quorcendis. It's a mouthful, I know. It basically means the Julian law on punishing adultery, and it was a game changer. Before this law, an affair was a family disgrace, handled behind closed doors. Augustus made it a public crime against the state. Suddenly, who you were sleeping with was the government's business.
Okay, but here's the catch. What did adultery actually mean to them? This is so important. The law only applied if a married woman had sex with a man who wasn't her husband. A husband could sleep with slaves, prostitutes, unmarried women, pretty much anyone who wasn't another man's respectable wife, and it wasn't a crime. The law was all about controlling women to guarantee who the father of an heir was.
And the punishments? They were unbelievably harsh. A father could legally kill his own daughter on the spot. A husband had to prosecute his wife, or he could be charged with being a pimp. If you were found guilty, you lost huge chunks of your property and were banished for life to separate, miserable islands. This was the state reaching directly into the family home.
So you have Emperor Augustus in Rome, completely obsessed with micromanaging the moral fabric of the city. But while his gaze is turned inward, his attention is being pulled away from a massive storm gathering on the most dangerous frontier of his entire empire.
The contrast is just stunning, isn't it? While the emperor is focused on moral purity at home, his governor, a man named Publius Quintilius Varus, is leading this massive army deep into a land the Romans fundamentally misunderstood, and worse, he was putting his trust in absolutely the wrong people.
The Romans walked straight into a masterpiece of a trap. They weren't marching ready for a fight, they were stretched out in a column that was miles long, slowed down by supply wagons and civilians. The whole thing was orchestrated by Arminius, a German chief who was also a high-ranking Roman officer. He used his inside knowledge to guide them into a narrow, swampy path where all their training was useless, right as a massive storm broke out.
What followed was a 3-day running nightmare. Day 1, the Germans hit them in the storm, causing instant chaos. Day 2, the Romans fought their way to what they thought was safer, open ground, but the attacks just never stopped. And by day 3, they were funneled into a final kill zone, pinned against a wall the Germans had already built. And there, the last of them were just cut to pieces.
When the news finally reached Rome, it sent a shockwave of pure panic through the city. The psychological blow was enormous. The invincible legions had been annihilated by people they considered barbarians. For Augustus, this wasn't just a political crisis. It was a devastating personal failure.
But the deepest humiliation, the thing that would haunt Rome for generations, wasn't just losing the men. It was losing the aquili, the sacred eagle standard of each legion. To a Roman soldier, the eagle was the legion's soul. And all 3 were lost. 2 were captured and paraded around as trophies. The 3rd was supposedly saved from capture by its standard bearer, who drowned himself with it in a swamp rather than let it fall into enemy hands.
And the consequences were permanent. Before this battle, Rome fully intended to conquer all of Germany. After Teutoburg Forest, they gave up. They pulled back to the Rhine River, and that became the border of the Roman Empire for the next 400 years. This one single defeat literally redrew the map of Europe.
The historian Suetonius gives us this haunting image of the old emperor, completely broken by the news. He says that for months afterward, Augustus would just wander the halls of his palace, not shaving, not cutting his hair, and would randomly bang his head against a door, crying out, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions." It's a chilling picture of an all-powerful man facing the one thing he can't control.
So this whole story leaves us with this one nagging question. In his obsession to control everything, to police the private lives of his citizens in Rome, did Augustus himself create the very distraction that allowed a disaster to unfold on his border? It's a powerful reminder that no matter how mighty an empire is, its attention can't be everywhere at once. And sometimes what you choose to ignore is what ends up breaking you.